Hey, welcome to a special preview of the exhibition game between Creighton and Purdue on Saturday night, 7 o'clock Central Time at the CHI Health Center in Omaha. Joining me for Boy the Upload is Casey Bartley. Hey, Casey, thanks for joining me.
Hello, Tim. Hope you're having a good day. I'm jealous that you get to play host to the exhibition game.
Yeah, it's kind of a new concept. I know it wasn't part of the season ticket package, so everybody had to buy their tickets separately. And I know that there was a lot of like lower bowl seats available.
Mm-hmm.
I think still in the last week. So even though there's a lot of interest and excitement about the game, obviously when you got number 14 versus number 15 heading right off in an exhibition game, yes, it's an exhibition game, but I think you can kind of get a gauge of where you're at. Has First question I want to ask is: has Purdue done any secret scrimmages or anything?
They haven't done secret scrimmages. Last year they did this exact same thing. They went into Arkansas, did a road game, and I think Painter usually will do a secret scrimmage or two, but he absolutely loves these games. Anytime you talk to him, just to be honest, that exhibition Arkansas, just the arena, the atmosphere,
Sure.
one of the better ones of the season throughout. And I think, especially with the team this young as Purdue, he's going to really value getting them in a hostile atmosphere from the jump. Scrimmages are, they're useful. You learn a lot of things, but it's not like under the bright lights like this. And I think this is definitely where his focus will be for his team.
Yeah, Creighton had one last Saturday at Iowa State, so they're a top 10 team. So they performed fairly well considering but like Coach McDermott said, likes to throw a lot of combinations in there and a lot of players, and you know how those scrimmage deals go. They blow the whistle and stop, and you can't get it true. Score is not the important thing; it's the reps. Well, I guess elephant in the room. Got to ask you, what's life out without Mr. Edey?
Yeah, I don't think anyone really knows yet. One of the more telling things, Purdue brings in 5 true freshmen this year, 3 of them guards, 2 of them big men. And Painter's phrase is there hasn't been as much separation as he would like to see. That's good and bad. Obviously, it means no one's really fallen behind, but it also means that, someone like Daniel Jacobson, who looked like, if you're watching that U19 tape over the summer, looks like he could be a star in college. He's still got some things to learn. It's a little different when you're banging against 22, 23-year olds in the post. They're going to find that out against Creighton in particular. But yeah, I definitely expect the team to take maybe even more just mentality and how they approach things. They're going to try to keep it similar, but Edey as a leader and his humbleness and the way he built himself up really became that program the last couple of years. Braden Smith as a leader, a little more naturally feisty, I would say. And I think generally when you have a great player, your teams take on that personality. So it's gonna be interesting to see how the team evolves this season uh, from what they were last year.
I would think Coach Painter's got to love going up against Creighton when he's got some questions in the post. Going up against obviously the Big Ten, or excuse me, Big East Player of the Year in Ryan Kalkbrenner, and then a very capable backup as well. So I would think he's going to learn a lot about who can do it in the bright lights in a hostile environment and who can't.
Yeah, because I believe Kalkbrenner was a Painter target. And I think when he didn't go to Purdue, that's when Edey got the scholarship. If I remember, ancient
I think
history
you're
right.
correct on that. I think you're correct on that. And
Um,
it's kind of in his footprint too. He's from Missouri. Yeah,
right.
kind of that same.
Yeah. So it's always it was an interesting full circle when I believe you guys were at the Sweet 16 up in Detroit and Elite Eight,
Yeah.
just to have those same guys revolving around again. Um, but yeah, it is very unproven inside. There are a lot of young guys, like I said, Daniel Jacobson. Tool wise, he's 7'4", he moves great, but he is tiny. Um, can he hold up physically? Wilberg is gigantic, big body, but he's been here 3 years and he just hasn't played. Uh, Caleb First played a lot his first 2 seasons here, fell out of the rotation last year. Can he get more on the offensive end to make up, to allow him to play because of how good he is defensively? And then Trey Kaufman-Renn is the one guy that's known, offensive scorer, but Purdue doesn't know what they have with him on the defensive end exactly. Can he anchor a defense at the 5, or is he better suited to be a big 4? Those are all really good questions to ask and to watch when you go up against All-American, one of the best centers in the country, and Kalkbrenner, and a team that, as we were kind of discussing before the call, Creighton has a ton of experience. They are in the opposite end of where Purdue is going into this season.
Well, before we start shedding a lot of tears for Purdue, you still have some pretty good players coming back. Fletcher Loyer is a tremendous player. You mentioned Braden Smith. Talk about some of the returning cast, especially. So you're going to be, kind of flipped. I think the guards in the past years, everybody talked about Edey. I think they were kind of the unsung heroes of those teams, really, when you look at those games. Talk about the veteran presence you have back there.
Yeah, I mean, Braden Smith and Fletcher Loyer are the heartbeat of this team. They're 2 guards, 2 a little undersized. I quibble with anyone saying Smith isn't a good athlete because he is one of the quickest guys in the country. And last time I checked, quickness is very much an athletic skill. Loyer certainly lacks some strength and raw speed, but those guys have started from day one. And there's just not many college guards that have played and won 30+ games in both of their first 2 seasons. That kind of luxury for Painter is going to carry Purdue through this early part of the season, because I think the team that shows up against Creighton is going to look vastly different than the one in February and March, because a lot of these guys need to figure out their roles. But they do get one of the best, I think the best point guard in the country in Braden Smith, who is an elite playmaker who makes it difficult, not just on the guy who's guarding him, but everyone on the floor. If you slip up, if you're off one little bit, if you don't have an angle closed, he will find guys. And there are a lot of shooters around him. The 2 guys who have been technically around, Miles Colvin, a sophomore, Camden Heide, a redshirt sophomore, those are bigger wings that played some minutes last year for Purdue off the bench, and they're going to step up into bigger roles this season. But those are
Colvin,
2.
I thought Colvin did some really nice things last year.
He did. It's weird because he found himself out of the rotation for good stretches. Late in the Big Ten season, wasn't on the court at all. Played his way back into it in the Big Ten tournament, and then had some run in the NCAA tournament. Purdue's going to need his offensive ability, especially losing Edey, losing some of those shots. But both the guys are big, athletic when they want to defend, which Colvin made huge strides towards the end of the season. But those 2 guys are going to defend their ass off, and they can all shoot the threes. And that is going to be an interesting changeup. Purdue's always shot well, but I feel like this is going to be a more perimeter-oriented team compared to ones in the past.
You mentioned winning. This sounds stupid to say, but I think a lot of times winning is underrated with a player. Like how much a kid won in high school, AAU, if he was at another program. I mean, it just is so valuable to have a guy come onto the team and expect to win.
Yeah. Especially when it's a lead guard, someone who has the ball in his hand a lot. And you saw it at times with Fletcher. I mean, Braden Smith gets his love. People acknowledge him, but Fletcher Loyer, even in his own fan base, gets a lot of talk about not athletic enough, but he comes up in big games. Maui Invitational last year, he's coming up with rebounds, scoring 29 against Dalton Connect. He will make a play in big moments, and that's experience, that's winning, that's just wanting to do the right thing. And that is the exact example in what Matt Painter has been trying to perfect over the 2 decades at Purdue.
Yeah, you mentioned Maui. Creighton was there 2 years ago with a stacked field, and last year's Maui was off the charts, man. It was what a great tournament.
Yeah, Purdue got tested early, which it feeds into this going into a top 10 program like Creighton. It matters to get these big minutes early. It matters to find out what works, and sometimes maybe even more important, find out what doesn't work before you're putting wins and losses on the schedule.
You mentioned some young guys at the post. Who are some other young guys that might contribute on the wings and out at the guard position?
Yeah, so Purdue's going to have two freshman guards that are going to probably play, it looks like. The first one, Jakari Harris, son of Glenn Robinson, pretty good pedigree.
Big dog.
Um, Pretty big,
My
big
son
name
actually
at
got his
Purdue.
my son actually got his autograph one time when he was here
There you
doing
go.
an exhibition game. Yeah.
Yeah, so big things have been expected from him, obviously, from the beginning. Tough nosed guard, really defends hard, can get to the hoop. I think he's going to struggle with how to find his offense early. I'm not sure if anything he does on the offensive end right now is Big Ten elite level to where the points are going to come naturally. But defensively, he is going to step in it from day one. He is a strong guard, long arms, willing. That's what he wants to do. And the other guy is unheralded out of high school. Before Matt Painter gave him an offer, hardly anyone knew his name, CJ Cox. And he's a little bit more of a natural shot maker. Played up at Middlesex Magic up on the East Coast. And pretty much from day one of being on a team with 8, 9 D1 guys, has been the best guy on that team every year. And he's what you call, he's a winner. And he does the right things. He plays hard. He'll get to the hoop. He's been really impressive in live scrimmages, and has some of the best defensive chops that Matt Painter has brought on the perimeter at Purdue.
Yeah, you mentioned Painter and recruiting, and we at Creighton we have a little bit of history with Painter. He was at Southern Illinois for a very short time, but that was a transition from Bruce Weber had been there forever, and he came aboard, and everybody thought, okay, they're going to take a step back. And actually, I still remember him walking up that sideline and me thinking, man, I think this guy's going to make the program even better. And then goes to Purdue. And I've noticed at the time of Purdue, obviously, we're both at rival sites watching recruiting. He's been, you just have to be thrilled that since he's been, I mean, his recruiting is off the charts.
Yeah, it's not been the cleanest. He started off obviously with the baby boilers, Robbie Hummel, Etwan Moore, Juwan Johnson. Like, you can't do better than that with the first full-time recruiting class. But there were a couple stretches there where he kind of grabbed guys a little bit for their rankings, and it took him a couple years to realize, no, I knew what I was doing. I want my guys. And I think what we've been seeing the last 5-10 years is just him perfecting that pitch. He's, say what you want about him as a recruiter, as a coach, as far as finding talent, especially non-5-star talent, I'm not sure there's a better coach in the country. I'm not sure there's a better diagnoser of finding someone that's going to be an awesome college player. And he's just continuously turned out these gems, which is why when you bring in 5 freshmen in one class, you get excited. Because, at the time, he had 6 when he had Cannon Catchings, and he overbooked. And it was literally just like the last guy that came on was Daniel Jacobson. And it's just like, I can't say no to a 7'4" guy who can block the rim and shoot threes and do everything I want. And I think marrying that, getting some pedigree for Purdue, having success, and just knowing exactly his system, what he wants. His coaching staff has not turned over at all this year. Hasn't for the last 2 years.
That's huge.
It's wild. Yeah. With this much success. So it's just, he's compounding interest at this point of what he does well, and it's showing obviously with Purdue finally breaking through in March.
Well, and that's been the issue, right? I mean, Purdue just couldn't get by the first weekend, but I think that's natural for a coach that's coming into a power like, when you think power, you think of Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, all those things, and you see 5-stars all over the place, and so you immediately come in and you go, well, gee, I got to get some 5-stars here to legitimize myself. And I think Coach McDermott kind of went through that when we went to the Big East a little bit on a much smaller level, maybe not 5-stars, but some high 4s. And, they may work out, they may not. You're kind of grasping like, okay, I've got to get this talent. And pretty soon you just settle in and go, I need to just get my guys.
Right.
And once that happens, the light switch flips, and I think it has for both coaches. Another connection to this game, always Paul Lusk was a longtime coach of Missouri State, faced him for a long time, and obviously was on the staff here. he was a defensive guru when he was here.
Yeah.
Has he lived up to those expectations at Purdue?
I mean, absolutely. Purdue's defense, obviously Zach Edey, I think he's still unheralded for how good he was on defense. Like, it wasn't just offense, the way he was able to control down low, but also the flexibility and ability to build defenses around the type of talent and athletes Purdue has had. Because a lot of times, like when you're playing Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, that's not exactly a recipe for a lockdown defense. It's not, you don't look at those guys and you think, yeah, Purdue is going to be great on that end, but consistently, I mean, they had the 12th best defense on Ken Palm last year, 24th the year before that. And they have their rules. They're very strict about it. And that's the biggest thing young guys have to learn. This is what you're doing. This is what you do. One of the best things Painter said this year is, we build this trust now. If I trust you, you can play. And you build trust by doing the right thing every time. And getting his guys to get there. A little easier last year when you only bring on, 1 fifth year and 1 true freshman. The coaches, they love it. I think they've been revitalized by all the young guys, but you've probably been around coaching staffs with young guys. They have to work a little harder and they kind of have to repeat themselves a little bit. And there are moments of frustration when dealing with a lot of 18-year-olds all of a sudden.
Yeah, no doubt. Coach McGurk's exact same way when you talk about trust. I mean, you don't even have to talk to him. All you got to do is watch the games, and you can tell there's certain guys he just isn't fully trusted in. And I has hastened to say it this early, but they've got a transfer from Arizona State, Jemiah Neal. Guy's freak athletically long, can get a lot of passing lanes, tips a lot of balls, has some great assets on the offensive end. But I can just tell he's not. He could be a guy that fans will go, wow, look at him, look at him. And all of a sudden they won't see him for 5, 6, 7, 8 minute stretches. And they'll be like, what? And it's just that Mac's not fully bought in yet. And like he said, it's so huge when the lights turn on. These guys may look one way in practice. You don't know how they're going to look when the lights are on. And that's why a game like this is so beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. Creighton is going to have a big, just experience advantage. And I think it'll be interesting to see how early they can take advantage of that. And it'll be a good sign for Creighton, obviously. Purdue's in the lucky spot where they could have just blamed 5 freshmen for anything going wrong. So even if they look awful, it's a road environment, first time.
Well, yeah, you mentioned experience, and they do, because you've got Stephen Ashworth at the point and Ryan Kalkbrenner back. They've got some pieces back as well, but they are integrating 2 brand new players.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned Jemiah Neal, who was in a totally different system at Arizona State, and we won't get into that other than to say Arizona State. Okay, we all know what we're talking about there. Mm-hmm. And so he's had to learn a lot to be disciplined. And then the flip side is Pop Isaacs from Texas Tech. I think Max said the other day, this is his 3rd coaching staff and 3rd different defense he's had to learn in 3 years, which is a lot. He's coming off a hip injury that he had surgery on over the summer. So he's been a little slow to start, but you mentioned your 2 guards, and they're not, you're not looking at them going, wow, those are lockdown guys. Pop's probably the opposite. Yes, he has some nice offensive skills, but to me, everybody said, what do you think about him? I just described him as a dog, man. He's out there. He's going to really D you up and so forth. But beyond that, though, then it gets a little iffy because you've got a lot of guys who really haven't played much. Jason Green's probably going to be a starter at the 4. He got some run last year, but he doesn't have a lot of experience. And then they brought in 3 highly, highly recruited freshmen. Larry Johnson's, who's a freak athletically. He's probably of the 3, probably the furthest behind, though. But the kid they're most excited about is Jackson McAndrew out of Minnesota. I'm originally from there, and I ran into a high school official who's been officiating games 30 years. He goes, I think he's the best player I've ever officiated a game with in Minnesota. And that's saying a lot, because Minnesota, the problem with the Minnesota Gophers is following the Big Ten, they can't put a fence around Minnesota, man. All these guys go to Duke and Kansas and all over the place. And if
Purdue
they could just
has
keep
a guy, Camden Heide.
Yeah, yeah. They could just keep a few of them in house. They'd really have
Mhm.
something going. So that's saying a lot. And I would say yes. The kid apparently in the first scrimmage against Iowa State. Obviously, we know Iowa State for defense, and they were really impressed with the way he held his own in that game. So I think McDermott's going to play a lot of different combinations to try and see what these guys probably going to play, even to throw a few of the walk-ons who are very talented, probably the most talented walk-on group Creighton's had without any question. These guys, some of these guys could really play, and some of the freshmen coming in have said that they're like, "Oh, we were expecting walk-ons," and they're like, "Yeah, I'd never know this kid's a walk-on if I didn't know it." So I think they're going to play a lot of combinations they did against Iowa State as well. Do you expect that kind of from Painter as well? A lot of different combinations, probably that you wouldn't see in a regular game.
I think he'll say he will. I think it's smart to say you expect it. I was at that Arkansas game and he played his starters for the last 7 minutes of regulation, I think, and the 5 minutes of overtime. I don't know if Matt Painter can coach a game not to win.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's physically possible, like capable of it. Um, but no, he's gonna have to because he has so many weird big man lineups. And I think with Kalkbrenner especially, it's going to be fascinating how Creighton decides to defend Trey Kaufman-Renn. Do you expect Kalkbrenner to just take Kaufman-Renn as the biggest offensive threat one-on-one, or do you guys prefer to let him kind of just exist in the paint and
Well,
erase all those mistakes?
great question. Last year they went with drop coverage a lot, so
Mm.
he kind of dropped off, and you know if you look back at some of the games, like they lost two conference games at home. One of them was to Villanova, the first one out of the chute, and Dixon, who's back again, first team All Big East again this year. He seems like he's been there for 10 years. I know the Big Ten always has a couple guys like that. You're like, you're kidding me. The guy is not eligible yet. Um, he's a guy who can pop threes.
I don't
And
think you guys get to say that this year.
yeah, no, no, a lot of people.
You
You're
are
right.
that team now.
You're right. I think if Trey Alexander would have come back and not gone in the NBA, we'd have really had one of those teams.
Yeah.
Robbie Hummel was a guy that seemed like he was there forever. But that, yeah, so that'll be a good challenge because there are a couple bigs in the Big East that can pop out, hit threes, threaten you from the outside, threaten you off the dribble, and that'll be a good learning tool for Kalkbrenner. I think that's one of the things why he wasn't highly up on draft boards, was that part of it. And then the other, and you're going to see that, I'm sure Saturday, is he's going to step out and hit threes. He's got a beautiful shot. He's got a great rotation. He just didn't take a lot, and he improved on that last year and took more. But I mean, I can tell in practice already, he's very confident from out there this year. And that's the other thing moving ahead to the next level that you gotta have.
Did he hire Zach Edey's PR? Is this big man can shoot? It's like a program now every summer.
Yeah. But like I said, I think Kalk's happy being back. And McDermott said the other day, he's like, I just thought he'd come back and, this whole grind preseason. And you can just imagine for a fifth-year guy, like, all right, when are the games going to start? I'm tired of. He said he's coming every day with incredible enthusiasm, happiness, joy, and excited to be there, which is saying something.
I think obviously I'm not an old head and haven't been around for 30, 40 years of college basketball experience, but I think coaches and programs have done better at just making being on a college basketball team more enjoyable.
I think so too.
I do. There is an energy even in summer where they're just excited to be in there. The best part of these games are going to be when Kalkbrenner gets lined up with Trey Kaufman-Renn. I don't know how familiar you are with Kaufman-Renn's game.
A little bit.
He
I've
was
seen
the
him a little
4
bit.
alongside Edey for most of last year.
Yeah.
Has maybe the best just ready-made footwork I've ever seen out of a high school guy in the post. But he's not crazy long. He's not crazy explosive. But he's strong and quick, and he almost works inverse of what you think when he's pumping and spinning and moving around. And to watch that go up against an elite defender like Kalkbrenner, who does outsize him, has the length on him. It'll be very interesting to see how much Purdue goes to that. They'll probably try it out early, try to get him maybe in a foul trouble. But it's going to be a very fun, just if you're a junkie for basketball and like some post play, that's going to be a great one-on-one. And at the other end, Kalkbrenner and Braden Smith, when they get switched up or defending the pick and roll, for me, those are the two things that if Purdue can get good things going on offense already this early against, he's probably favored for defensive player of the year. Kalkbrenner, I would imagine.
Well, I mean, he was voted for, you mean the country?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he'd be in the mix. It's hard to tell at this point, but yeah. There's some other
So
talented big guys who can block shots. There's other talented guys who are wings or great defenders too. But I would certainly think he's got to be up there.
Yeah. So just as a basketball junkie, to watch someone like Kalkbrenner have to go against someone as good as Braden Smith in the pick and roll and TKR in the post, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I think Kalkbrenner could dominate the game on the glass. I'm not sold on Purdue rebounding.
Yeah, but he's gotten so good at the hedging and so forth, and that drop coverage that, sometimes, and Mac's a kind of coach, and probably won't do as much in an exhibition game, but in a regular season game, he's a guy who plays percentages. He'll say, hey, player X is shooting 29% from three. We're gonna make him beat us, and fans get upset when that player does beat us, but more times than not, he doesn't beat them, and the strategy works out great. And Max, I don't know how you think Painter's done, but Max, just the game planning is off the charts. I mean, and obviously he's well renowned as being an offensive guru and so forth, but his game planning as a whole is always very good. Now, I would think they're going to treat this like a regular game, so they get all their pieces together. They've got one new assistant, they've got a new grad assistant, so they're probably trying to get the whole system down. But it's always a big key, as you said, to have a staff back year after year after year. They've got a couple guys on the staff that have been here like 2-3 years now, and that's just immeasurable as to how that affects the season long.
Yeah, I'm obviously drop makes sense with someone like Kalkbrenner. If I'm Painter's staff, what I'm expecting is teams to try to get the ball out of Braden Smith's hand as quick as possible, which probably means more traps and hedges. I don't know if Creighton will do that, but I would imagine there will be some mixed in there because big guys on a short roll are unproven for Purdue. Those other guys on the perimeter, besides Lawyer, as decision makers, as playmakers, as go get your own bucket guys, are all unproven. And Braden Smith, as a shooter, has been lights out his first 2 years. I'm going to imagine, at least early on in the season, until either Purdue proves they can beat it or some adjustments are made, I'm expecting Creighton, I'm expecting most teams to say, Braden Smith has the ball. I don't like that. Let's double.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see.
There's one wild card here for Creighton. I would say it's probably a guy the fans are most interested in watching is Jason Green, who didn't, because of Baylor Sharman and guys like that on the roster last year, didn't get a lot of run. I think he's the one guy people are anxious to see. Is there one guy that maybe Purdue fans are kind of looking to really see what he can do this year?
I think it's Miles Colvin, because of the pedigree, because of how when he does stuff well, it bounces off the court because he's a crazy athlete with a beautiful jump shot. And if he does, there's a couple different guys because I'm not sure how Painter is he going to commit to small ball, or does he feel like he needs a 5 with TKR? And if so, that limits the numbers of wing minutes. But yeah, I think Miles Colvin is the biggest X factor in terms of who could emerge as a true star on the team.
All right. So let's just break this down. It's going to be 7:00 Central Time. Game is on public TV here in Nebraska. There is a link that I'm going to share with you guys at
Perfect.
Boiler Up. So Boiler Upload, so you guys can have that link. I think it is for out-of-state people. It's a pay deal, but I don't know how it works. But your fans will all be able to watch the game that way. We do a post-game show. Blue Jay Banner does a post-game show live at a sports bar as a podcast studio. So we're going to do that again on Saturday after the game. It'll be on probably 15 minutes after the game. You go to our YouTube channel, Blue Jay Banner. Check it out there. We'll share the link with you guys as well. Purdue fans, I'll ask, hit that subscribe button to help us out, as you guys well know.
Yep.
And we're lucky to share product with you, and it's been just an unbelievable conversation with you. Thanks so much. Before I let you go, though, just a little, and for Purdue fans too, I know I've watched other teams post games, and it's all about the other team, and it's like, okay, we do talk a lot about the opponent we played, and a lot about the players. So I think you'll get good. We have former players on, so it really gets some good information there. But I do want to, guy who grew up in Big Ten country, I do want to talk a little bit about the Big Ten. Purdue's a favorite, but I think to me, it's probably the conference. You know, as I do bracketology, I'm seeing, 10, 11 teams from the Big 12 and that many from the SEC. When I look at the Big Ten, I don't see as many, but I think there's just a lot of unknowns all up and down that first 6, 7, 8. I mean, really, you could throw them in a hat and mix them up.
It's getting really hard to trust any team in the Big Ten that's not Purdue. And the amount of trust you have is like Illinois level trust, which is like you'll be ranked highly, but you'll disappoint at some point.
Very good.
But like past that, Michigan State, it just seems like joyless basketball.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't seem like anyone's enjoying themselves. Izzo definitely is not. I don't know if that man has smiled in the last 3 years.
You think that's kind of the Tony Bennett effect on some of these coaches who've been around forever? Krzyzewski, Jay Wright, that this NIL and transfer thing is out of control.
Honestly, I think it's them being stubborn, and they had a lot of success with the way it's worked, and they've just been unwilling to meet the middle ground. I think Matt Painter was the exact age where he was still enough with this generation and adaptable and hired a bunch of young guys, and he was able to make it work. He is not a miserable person. Like, he does not hate his job. He does not have the benefits of a ton of NIL like other Purdue does well basketball NIL, but like he's not out there, throwing out $1 million. He's losing guys to NIL. Not a miserable guy. But when you stubbornly try to stick to what has only been your definition of the sport, you're not going to have fun.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because Creighton's kind of the same way.
Yeah.
Max got a tier system, and we just lost a kid to UConn we were on and in first place in recruiting the whole time. He took the money, and Mac is not gonna change that. He's not gonna give a kid coming off the street $1 million. He's just not gonna do it, and he stuck to it. And I think it sounds like Painter does this kind of the same way. And I think a lot of these coaches panic, throw money at the guys, then it just turns out to be a disaster because they have such a discrepancy on their team, and then it goes. And I think you've got to be disciplined enough, like these two coaches are, to keep a system where it's going to fit a quote unquote salary cap,
Yeah. I mean, back in the day when you sold your soul, you were pretty sure what you were getting back. Now it's an open market for it. So it's tougher. I don't even know. It's obviously tougher, but like college basketball is always a grind. It's just a different grind now. And some people are trying to hold on to something that's not there anymore.
Yeah. And we talk about it a lot.
Recipe for.
Yeah. We talk a lot about this time of year, but in a couple of weeks we'll forget all about it, and it'll be another great season. So yeah, I think Illinois is probably preseason ranked lower than they should be, which is unusual. But I don't. Yeah, Rutgers. Man, you don't want to take too much from an exhibition game, but they lost at home to St. John's, who's not going to be bad, but still,
no.
I think they're too highly ranked. Wisconsin, I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard
Iowa,
with new coaches.
Iowa,
obviously.
maybe.
No, never Iowa. It's never Iowa.
That's great.
It's
he's great to watch.
Yeah, when you have like Michigan and Ohio State both welcoming in new coaches, it's tough. Are they going to be able to
Yeah.
immediately jump up to the top? Probably not. You need a year or two at least to get fully locked in. I guess the big benefit of the Big Ten this year is, I mean, we mentioned all these old school Big Ten teams.
Oregon,
UCLA is sitting there.
Oregon too.
Oregon, like, can I confidently say I know a ton about them right now? No, because for last 10 years I've ignored them.
Well, we
So
we follow him pretty close because our old coach is there, and he's a legend, and all he does is win. You know.
right.
And yeah, it'd be interesting to see Musselman actually. You know,
Yeah.
I don't think he'll be there this year, but man,
I don't know if I can handle Musselman in my life twice a year.
that dude brings in players.
He brings in something.
Yeah. So
he's
yeah,
turned all
it
the
is
way
going to
up.
be, and not, and then we're talking about all of that, and then the travel's going to be insane. You know,
I don't think it's going to be that bad. For Purdue this year, it's 2 games back to back, 1 week to the West Coast. It's not that big of a deal.
yeah. Well,
For the West Coast teams, it sucks.
yeah, East Coast
Terrible.
too. If you're Rutgers going all the way across 3 times.
Yeah, but what's the difference? Really, it's 2 more hours in the airtime.
Yeah.
So they'll be fine.
Says the guy who's not playing.
I mean, I did the travel, and I guarantee you, my accommodations are not as welcoming as most D1 college programs. So,
Just joking with you, Casey. Hey, I really appreciate you joining me. This was great. Thanks so much. Hope we can do it again in March when we're getting ready for a Sweet 16 matchup or something.
Right?
Yeah.
Sounds good, Tim. Thanks
All
for
right.
having me
Thanks,
on.
Casey.